ever so much, all of you, for opting to come along this afternoon to do a bit of creative writing. And obviously, the focus of the session, Brilliant Writing, is using creative writing as a wellbeing tool. I certainly use creative writing in that way, in both in my professional and my personal life, in terms of I find that creative writing is it's an inherently optimistic act, because you're creating something. It's like crafting anything. You're essentially putting something into the world that wasn't there before, and that's a very optimistic thing to do. And I find that if I don't write, if I have days or weeks where I haven't had a chance to do at least a little bit of writing, I generally feel worse than those times when I'm able to write. So I do think it has a real beneficial component for well-being, and particularly, and certainly for me personally, I find that. But I also see that in the work that I do with various adults and students across schools and in other organisations. So hopefully this session you'll get something out of the various activities that we're going to do. So we're going to jump straight into a little bit of writing. So essentially I'm going to ask you to just make a shopping list of brilliant things. So essentially, what I mean by brilliant things is anything that you think is brilliant. It could be really mundane. It could be something amazing, like the Northern Lights are brilliant, but that's quite a big thing. It could be something like gravy is brilliant with a meal, for example. So something completely and utterly mundane. So what I'm going to ask you to do to start with is to just make a list of things that you think are brilliant, that are positive, that are kind of life affirming. So if you can take about 2 minutes just to do that, and I'm going to make my own list as well. And don't worry about writing anything additional. Just the item, the object, the thing. It can be something abstract even, like knowledge, for example, is brilliant. Knowing stuff. So yeah, it can be a completely abstract thing. Okay, hopefully you've got a few things down. You're going to get an opportunity to add to your list in a moment. But I'm going to ask now, Mariam, if you could possibly, I don't know if you've already done it, because obviously I can't see the chat from my screen, but if it's all possible, could you share the link to the Padlet so that people can use that in a moment? That would be awesome.
Yeah, I've just popped it in the chat box then.
Brilliant. So if you follow that link, what you'll find is sorry, I'm just having a slight problem technical. There we go. So what you'll find on that from via that link is a kind of a virtual notepad where you can add your own notes, and you'll see on there that there is already one note from me, which I've just started, which is some things that I think are brilliant. So there's only 3 things on my list at the moment. So I'm going to add a few more in a moment. So what I'd like you to do, if you're able to, there's a red plus button on the right hand side of the Padlet screen. If you click on there, you should be able to post your list up. So we should see a few lists of people's brilliant things that they've listed. So I'm just going to add a couple of things to my list. So hopefully those of you that are on it will be able to see that. I've just updated my list. Brilliant. Yeah, you can always edit your own list, so you can add things to it as we go along during the workshop. Obviously, there's no need. People don't have to feel the need to post up. If you prefer not to or unable to, don't worry about that. But it is great to be able to see how people develop things with their as the workshop sort of progresses. So if you are happy to post things onto the Padlet, that's fantastic. Right, I'm going to actually share a screen now so that I can. Right, I'm unsure. Hopefully you should now be able to see. Yeah, you should now be able to see my PowerPoint, hopefully. Unfortunately, Teams behaves very strangely on my MacBook, so I can't actually see. Usually on a virtual session, I can see what I'm sharing, but it's got a red border on it, so I'm assuming it is visible to everyone. So this idea about brilliant things comes from a play by Duncan Macmillan, and it's about a young man who's kind of dealing with quite a serious problem in his life. And one of the ways that he overcomes that or tries to deal with it is that he decides to make a list of everything brilliant about the world, everything that's worth kind of living for. So he starts to make this list when he's 8 years old. So it's full of things like ice cream, water fights, things with stripes, chocolate, cartoons like Danger Mouse. And as the list progresses, things get slightly more, they start to get more and more sort of developed. So you get things like the way Ray Charles sings You in the song Drown in My Own Tears, the smell of old books, even numbered Star Trek movies. So things are quite specific as well. So don't worry if on your list you've written down things that are very specific that perhaps only you know the relevance of. That's kind of the point with this exercise, is the things that you think are brilliant. So you're going to be responding in your personal way. Yeah, and then you've got things like Nina Simone's voice, winning something, knowing someone well enough to get them to check your teeth for broccoli, which that's one of my favorite ones on the list. When idioms coincide with real life occurrences, for instance, waking up, realizing something and simultaneously smelling coffee, the word plinth. So a lot of these things are actually quite abstract. They're either experiences or ideas of things. Having dessert as main course, of course, that's, you know, the other things are quite physical. Hairdressers who listen to what you want, really good oranges. Okay, so you've started to make your list. I'm going to give you a little bit more writing time. And these are the guidelines that the narrator of the play sets himself when doing this activity. So he makes the rule that there's no repetition. Things have to be genuinely wonderful and life affirming, not too many material items, and things don't have to be earth-shatteringly amazing. They can be mundane. The mundane should be just as brilliant as the extraordinary. So hopefully, you know, there'll be a mixture of things on your list, mixture of abstract and real things, a mixture of the kind of the extraordinary and the very, very mundane that is actually, but that is actually brilliant. So what I would invite you to do now is just to very quickly add maybe 3, 4, 5 items to your list if you can. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to have a think about the sorts of things you might like to add. If you can do more than that in the time, that's brilliant. So yeah, if you could just add a few more things to your list, and I'm going to do the same. Right, and it's brilliant to see so many things going up on the Padlet as well. Yeah, feel free to add to your list. If you've already posted something on there, you can just edit the list that you've already started and add the things onto it. But it's great. Yeah, that's great to see that there's those things appearing on the Padlet. Yeah, some fantastic things. Fluffy slippers, brilliant. Fireworks, cocktails, excellent. That's a good one for a Friday evening. Meditation and yoga. Sleep, yeah, sleep is brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to add a few more onto my that I've just done onto my list. So those are there that people can see as well. Excellent. Okay, so far we've done something really positive in that we've just focused our minds on really positive things that make us happy, things that we think are brilliant, things that make our lives better in some way. There's some of them are huge things, really big things to do with family or to do with the kind of the world at large. Some are very, very small things, but they all work to make life, kind of a more pleasurable experience. So yeah, I mean, I really like the more sort of mundane things, and I kind of don't use that word in a disparaging way at all. On my list, I've got the comfy socks, wearing comfy socks, having socks that don't make, kind of aren't too tight, aren't too, have seams that are kind of pressing in, things like that. Fresh beddings on one of the lists. Things like bird song, which kind of it's so easy to take for granted because it kind of surrounds us when we're outside, and you can almost not notice it. And just taking that time to notice these things is fantastic. Obviously, the brain's kind of a linear processor. So doing an exercise like this just helps to reframe your thinking so that it move. It's a really good exercise this to do if you're feeling kind of having one of those days where you feel like you could do with a bit of positivity, because it reframes your thinking and puts that linear processor, targets it on sort of more positive things that are kind of in your life or around you, or things that in the world. But we're going to do a little bit more writing with these, because obviously a list is not necessarily, although this could be, this would make an excellent list poem. A lot of these, they would make excellent list poems in terms of you could title it brilliant things and just have them as they are. But what we're going to do now is we're going to try and add a bit more sort of specific detail to them. Because whenever I'm dealing with writing workshops, one of the key things I try and impart to participants in the workshops is that it's those specific things that kind of make the writing come alive, the specific details. So you've got your own specific list of brilliant things to start with. So that's a really great starting point. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to now, I've just changed the screen. Hopefully you can see that as well on the screen that I'm sharing. So for each of your brilliant things, for as many of them as you can do anyway in the time that you're going to have, I'd like you to add one or two more specific details to your brilliant things to make them really come alive. So I've got a couple of examples on there. Fresh orange juice, that's one that should be on my list. I'm going to add it in a moment. But I could develop that into the first sip of orange juice. But it might be even better to say the tangy bite of the first gulp of orange juice fresh from the fridge. So to kind of turn it into a line that becomes an experience. So it's not just the object or the idea or the thing in the world that that you think is brilliant, but maybe a few specific things about what makes that thing brilliant. So the tangy bite of the first gulp of orange juice fresh from the fridge. Some of you may have noticed I've got Tom Baker on my list. It's Tom Baker's grin as the Doctor that I could just remember from when I was a little boy, when I was sort of 8, 9 years old and watching that on the telly. But Tom Baker's grin, as he would say, "Would you like a jelly baby?" But I've even developed that a little bit further at the end of that sort of sequence that you can see on the screen. The fourth Doctor's foolish grin as he holds out a crumpled paper bag and says to the annoyance of the villain of the week, "Would you like a jelly baby?" So that the line kind of builds. It's got a little bit more sort of power to it, a little bit more momentum to it, and the description kind of grows. And that's a really specific one to me. But that's fine, because presumably people will know who the Doctor is, and they may not know specifically who the fourth Doctor is, but there's enough of an awareness of that in the culture that people will be able to understand perhaps what I'm talking about. And obviously those people of a similar generation to me may absolutely sort of latch onto a line like that. But that we're not really worrying about readers. We're writing for ourselves at this point. And so, yeah, the more specific detail you can put in, it kind of just brings the piece of writing to life. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to give you about 7 or 8 minutes to really sort of focus on your lines. You don't have to take them in order, and you may not have time to do all of them, but I'd like to invite you now to have a go at just adding a few specific details to your brilliant things, to a few of your brilliant things, so that you can turn them into perhaps a more detailed description, a more kind of a description that becomes more of an experience than just the statement that you've got on the list currently, so that it becomes something that the reader actually experiences, gives them a sense of what it is that you think is brilliant about that object, about that thing, about that idea. Cool. Hopefully, yeah, if you'd like to, as I will remind people towards the end of this session of writing, you can update your Padlet note with your new versions, your kind of new lines that you've created from these ideas. So take one of your brilliant things at a time and add 1 or 2 or 3 more specific details to really bring them alive. Okay, which is exactly what I'm going to have a go at doing as well, because I don't like to set tasks for writing workshops and not do them myself. That seems entirely wrong to do that, to expect you to do writing and to be not writing alongside you. Okay, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes of writing left. It's fantastic to see so many great lines starting to appear on the Padlet as well. And I'm sure there are many more out there in notebooks or on word processor documents or however people are working this afternoon. I've just posted a couple of my own attempts on there, and I've just noticed that I've got a spelling error as well, which is not unusual for me. Yeah, so please do keep adding those. We've got a couple more minutes of writing time on this. I'm hopefully going to add at least one more line to mine. Okay, I'm going to give everyone just a moment to finish off the line that they're writing. What would be fantastic this afternoon would be to hear some of these read by their authors, read by the people writing them. So I would like to invite you to share your writing if you're happy to do that. Obviously, there's no requirement to. No one's you don't feel that you have to, but it would be fantastic to hear a few of these lines read. It might be that you only want to read, you've got a particular line that you would like to read out. So there's no set amount that anyone has to read either. But if you would like to, if there is anyone that would like to read out what they've written in terms of their brilliant things, it'd be fantastic to hear some. If you could maybe put a thumbs up in the excellent. Yeah, Rebecca, yeah, you've got your hand up, I can see. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay,
Hi.
Hi. Right, just got to get the screen back up. Okay, got it. Hang on, there we go.
Brilliant.
So I put Fresh bedding, entering the bed, smelling the fresh linen, smelling and breathing in the outdoors.
Fantastic.
That's
No, but that's great. That's and it is there is something about that experience, isn't there? The fresh bedding, and it is a very simple thing, but it's quite profound, the effect that it has on us as individuals, that kind of thing. And even just hearing those lines, if you feel pleasure hearing those words because it's describing that thing, and your brain is kind of doing all that clever stuff it does of lighting up the experience, so it's understanding the words, and but it's also remembering, and your brain is almost telling your body this is happening now, so that you get all of that pleasure from it.
When I was writing it, I kind of imagined I'd got the duvet and I was going like this, like sniffing it up. That's what it brought out in me by doing the writing. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's I mean, reading and writing, it's a really powerful thing that the language does, that it makes something that isn't present in front of us really present. And suddenly, you can almost touch it, and it is a really powerful thing that writing and reading do. Fantastic. Did you have anything else you'd like to read, or?
No, I let my colleague Jackie go.
Yeah, awesome.
Hello. I really enjoyed doing that. I've got quite a long list, but I just pick on three.
Cool.
First of all is my love-hate at the moment, which is football, because I'm a Man United supporter and we're going through a rather tough time at the moment. But it's still brilliant. I've been a lifelong supporter. My last one, so that was first on my list, and last on my list is Marmite. And I put, who doesn't love Marmite on their toast in the morning? So it's one of those love-hate relationships. But a bit like Rebecca's just said, just writing it, but it's like I want to go and make some now. I wish I had some really nice crusty white bread in my kitchen, but I don't. And then the bird song, I've really noticed it this year, and we were very lucky to have a song thrush that used to visit the back of our garden, and it was the most beautiful sound that it used to make every morning for a good few months as well. So it was really nice.
Wow, yeah, brilliant. And I can just see from your face how much pleasure that just thinking about those things kind of brings, and it does doing this kind of an activity just really resets and it just has a really positive beneficial effect on you, just in terms of the process of it. And then if you're lucky, at the end of it you'll have something that you've made as well, a little piece of writing that you can kind of share, or just keep for yourself to look at and remind yourself, like, oh yeah, remember when you did this, or to have it as that little positive little memento to kind of help you get back on it, feel back on positive.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clary. Maybe got time for one more if anyone else would like to share anything from their list.
I don't mind sharing something.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'll just turn on my camera so you can put a face to a name. Hello, everybody. To be honest, I was actually surprised when I started writing and typing away my thought process, and I was like, I didn't know I could, think of some of the things, like you said, to put, and you just put more to the what, just to put in a simple word or a phrase. But I've got a few, so I'll go with the first one was family for me. I wrote, my mother is the heart and soul of our family. Together we are strong, caring and loving, and towards one another. So that all came into my head because family does mean a lot to me, but more importantly because today's a special day for Sikhs. Today is the birthday of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, which was the first Guru. So this morning we've all been sending each other beautiful sort of prayers and words. So it's just really uplifting and nice. So that's why family story came into my head.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thing in itself. That sounds amazing.
And the next one was friends. So friends come and go in life. They teach us valuable lessons, but true friendship never leaves your sight. A smile, a connection. So that sort of reminisced with me because obviously throughout even the pandemic, but just in general, you don't always speak to a friend all the time. But when you do, it's like you've never lost sight of them. Like you're like, oh my gosh, you like rekindle everything from back when you last spoke to them. So So friendship was another one. Falling in love. So I don't know why, but my first crush came into my head when I was a child. So I was like, my first crush, pain, hope for tomorrow. So I say, you experience pain to know you once fell in love, fall in love with oneself. So I'm doing a bit of meditation, so that's how I thought of falling in love. And then the last one, which is a favourite one of mine, because I do like being outdoors and walking, trekking around the world. Just me, no one else, surrounded by the wilderness, the smell of the air, the wind in my hair, and the breeze pressed against my cheek. So that just sort of reminisced when I did a 26-mile trek in the Lake District. So yes, that was my last thought.
Wow, there's so much in there, and I love the fact that you've got those little phrases that do bring them to life, and kind of and dealing with quite profound, kind of big things, but making them very specific and making them kind of and definitely as you were reading those out, I know it was triggering. This is the other thing with this kind of activity. It starts to make, when you start hearing other people's, it immediately makes you think, oh yeah, and either you've got something similar or it's related. You immediately start making connections, and it just builds this kind of it's like a positivity machine that it kind of expands. It just keeps getting bigger, because the more that's kind of the more ideas that you have, it kind of triggers the next one and the next one, and hearing other people's has the same effect.
Definitely, yes. I like the fresh bread linen. Was it from Rebecca? I was like, oh my gosh, I love that feeling.
Yeah, it's such a nice feeling.
Reading everybody else's comments.
That's brilliant. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's great. Wow. Actually, that takes us really nicely into the next activity. Because I was going to, I would share one. I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you again. Just before we go on to the next activity, this is a poem by Vita Sackville-West, and essentially it's doing what we've just done, but it's just been kind of edited, put together. It's a list. Essentially, it's a list of brilliant things. It was through leaves to run a stick along an iron railing or crunch thin ice, to suddenly remember a word or name you thought you'd forgotten, to write with the perfect pen, pulling curtains that run freely on their rods, sliding out a drawer which opened readily and silkily on ball bearings, cutting pages of a book with a sharp paper cutter, drawing a cork with a good corkscrew, drinking when you're thirsty, feeling of sand between your toes at the beach, and reading in bed. Others include sinking into bouncy seats at the movies, waking up to find it has snowed overnight, shopping in an outdoor market, putting on a freshly ironed shirt, or suddenly catching sight of the sea. So you could actually take, as you can see from that, you could actually take the ideas that you've got from your list and some of the pieces that you've got, and assemble them into some kind of list poem, a bit like this, to be your own personal kind of list of brilliant things. And it's the sort of thing that you can keep adding to as well. In the book, in the play, the narrator actually makes a list of 1,000 brilliant things. That's his goal, and when he reaches that, he actually meets somebody else, shares the list with them, and they begin adding to it. So then it becomes this kind of collaboration. So yeah, this process can go kind of keep rolling on, and it's kind of is this kind of positivity machine that kind of keeps going. But what is also fantastic is that a lot of those examples that we've just heard, they're tied in very specifically with memory. And Nina actually used the word about kind of reminiscing and remembering things. You actually use that phrase. It's really it's really handy for me, that, because it makes a really nice link into the second activity that I'd like you to have a go at. So this is an activity called I Remember, and this is kind of writing as a memory machine. There's a writer called Joe Brainard, writer and artist, and he wrote a book called I Remember, and it is essentially just a series of sentences that all start with the words I remember. Each sentence details a particular memory, and he doesn't necessarily explain the whole detail of the memory. He leaves a lot for the reader to kind of inhabit, and a lot for the reader to figure out. So I'll show you a couple of some examples. These are from Joe Brainard's book, I Remember. I remember big fat ties with fish on them. I remember the first ballpoint pens they skipped and deposited little balls of ink that would accumulate on the point. I remember butter and sugar sandwiches. I remember when I worked in an antique shop and I sold everything cheaper than I was supposed to. I remember planning to tear page 48 out of every book I read from the Boston Public Library, but soon losing interest. I remember house shoes, plaid flannel bathrobes, and Casper the Friendly Ghost. I remember waking up once and there was a horse staring me in the face. I remember thinking that flushing away pee might be a big waste. I remember thinking that pee is probably good for something, and that if one could just discover what it was good for, one could make a mint. I remember staying in the bathtub too long and having wrinkled toes and fingers. I remember at the end of a haircut getting my neck dusted off with soft brush full of nice smelling powder and getting swirled around to look in the mirror and how big afterwards my ears were. I remember a shoe store with a big brown x-ray machine that showed up the bones in your feet bright green. I remember wondering why your head didn't get full of water through your ears and nose. I remember the mostly unique to childhood problem of losing things through a hole in your pocket. I remember go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. I remember red hands from falling down on gravel driveways. I remember a dream of meeting a man made out of very soft cheese, and when I went to shake his hand, I just pulled his whole arm off. I remember that carrots are good for you and that beans make you fart. I remember cold sheets in the winter time. Yeah, and that brings us quite nicely full circle because we're back onto sheets again. But yeah, so these are I've focused on the ones that I've taken. I've focused on ones that kind of perhaps can be read as having kind of a positive association, because in the book, not all of them. Some of the memories, obviously, that he ends up writing about are not necessarily positive memories. But for this purposes of this afternoon, and thinking about this as a kind of well-being, writing as a well-being exercise, I want to ask you to focus on perhaps the memories that give you pleasure or in some way, or that are positive in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean they obviously they might have hints of other emotions in them as well, because our emotional lives are complex, and sometimes emotions are mixed. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to again, there's some guidelines on the screen for you. I'm going to ask you to write a series of sentences using the words I remember, beginning with the words I remember, and then to just try and focus on memories that generate a emotion of some sort. It might seem difficult at first, but I remember is kind of a memory machine. Once you start to write one, a bit like with the brilliant things, you start to write one, your brain will kind of, it wants to help. It will want to help, and it will start giving you memories. Things will start to return. And again, in your sentence, try and use some specific detail, but don't feel the need to over-explain. Part of the joy of the sentences in Joe Brainard's book is they don't give away the whole story. I don't know why he woke up one day with a horse staring at him. There's no explanation of that in the book, and I kind of like not knowing why that is, because it lets the reader inhabit the sentence and complete it, and it gives ownership of the sentence, not just to Joe Brainard but to the reader as well, because they can come up with their own narrative around that and their own sort of story around that. So I'm going to invite you now, maybe for the next sort of 8 or so minutes, to have a go at writing your own I remember sentences. See how many you can get. And again, towards the end of this, I'll ask you to post some on the Padlet. You can start a new note and maybe put your name as the heading and I remember, and then add those so that you've got a couple of notes then on the board if you've been using the Padlet board, work on them. So I'm going to post a couple that I've done earlier, but then I'm going to have a go at some more myself as well. Excellent. So yeah, if you can have a go at writing those sentences with the words I remember at the beginning, so it becomes almost like a list poem immediately as you're writing. It's really fantastic to see so many I remember sentences starting to appear on the Padlet as well. I'm sure there are many more out there. It's fantastic. Keep doing that. These are really brilliant. If you do have access to the Padlet as well and you find yourself getting stuck, it's worth having a look at other people's sentences, because they will trigger memories in yourself. You'll have some memory that is similar, or some memory that builds from that one, or you might it be linked in some way. It will kind of trigger your brain into kind of memory sort of mode, and things will come. So if you are getting stuck, it might be worth having a look at what others have written. It will almost certainly trigger another memory for yourself. Okay, I'm going to just give you a minute or two more just to finish off the one that you're writing, and maybe give people a chance to post onto Padlet if they want to as well. but if you're not using the Padlet, then please feel free just to maybe write an additional one if you'd like.
Just while we're waiting, Dan, Sheila's popped in the chat. She just wanted to say thank you for making her more aware of how many brilliant things there are in her life.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, that's absolutely what this sort of activity should be doing. It's an opportunity for us to, to kind of reflect on the really positive things that we've got around us that we don't always have time to notice as much as we should. So I think, that's great. I think it's fantastic that you've had that kind of response to it. Thank you very much for sharing that, because that's exactly what I was hoping for with these activities.
Yeah, and Jackie's just wrote, it's a great way to end the week.
Yeah, I think doing a writing activity and engaging in anything creative really, it is just such a positive, optimistic thing, because as I said at the beginning, it is just it is creating something positive. It is putting something into the world that wasn't there before, and something that has then a positive effect. The hearing each other's. I mean, I'm looking at the notes on the Padlet at the moment, and I'm getting pleasure from other people's memories. It's an amazing thing, I think, that you you respond as well. It builds, as I said before, that as I'm reading some of these, that it generates memories, further memories for myself. Right, I'm just going to add my last few. Awesome. And I'm going to unshare that screen. There we go. So what I'd like to do now is to invite anyone who'd like to read out and share any of their I remember sentences. I would ask maybe that don't feel the need to explain them, because as I said, that's part of the joy of these things, is that they just kind of capture the experience, but they also allow the reader to kind of engage and inhabit them a little bit, because they don't necessarily tell us everything about that moment. If there is anyone who would like to share, if you could pop your hand up. Awesome. Yeah, Carl, would you like to share? As you have, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
I got into the last lot. I remember sitting up in bed with our new baby sleeping on my shoulder. I remember my first kiss with my wife. I remember sitting in the back garden with my brother and a Reader's Digest book identifying birds.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Do you want more?
Yeah, please. I'm sorry if I spoke over you. I apologise.
Oh no. I was paused.
Absolutely.
What we got? I remember playing in the overground wasteland down Pope's Lane. And the last one was, I remember finding out that one of my colleagues was into skydiving.
Each one of those is like a little story. It's kind of and I think that's one of the things that's great about this exercise. But I love the fact that we've got a sense of characters of people, real kind of people that and who they are and what they're doing. The kind of and some really beautiful kind of quiet moments. Identifying birds in the back garden, and that kind of shared experience, and that kind of and the positivity that comes from that, and remembering that. That's very powerful. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Carl. That's fantastic. Have we got anyone else who would like to share?
I'll do a couple of mine really quickly, Dan.
Okay,
I'll just pick out a few that I really, really like. I remember my Bay City roller tartan trousers. I remember my first wedge sandals and trying to walk like a lady. I remember queuing for hours to watch Grease. It's really just showing my age, actually. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I was thinking there's some very specific, because they do place it in time, but that's the power of that specific detail that it creates, and that, I mean, that one about the wedge shoes, I got a whole movie playing in my head of that as you read that line out. It's kind of, I can see your younger self kind of with the shoe, the whole thing of putting them on they get it all in that line. It's kind of just all packed in and condensed into that sentence. So there's brilliant, awesome stuff. Thank you very much. We've got time for maybe one or two more. If anyone's keen to share, that'd be really great to hear a few more. Excellent. Rebecca, was that your hand going up? It went and disappeared again. Awesome. Oh yeah, I can see it again now.
So I remember my nan's homemade toffee. I remember wanting to be Professor Plum. I remember watching Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. I remember the £1 coin you gave me each time I visited. I remember a 10p mix. I remember sitting on top of the bus. I remember the smell of your Sunday dinners. I remember the calls with Santa. And I remember Vegas, baby.
Excellent. That's a great finishing line. If you did write a list poem of I remember sentences, that would be a great end line as well. I really like that. I love the fact that you've got those yous in there, like you're directing it to someone. That line is directed to someone, but you don't feel the need to tell us who that is, or that we get a sense of that just from that, and it leaves the sentence kind of nice and open for other people to kind of access it and inhabit it and respond to it. That's brilliant. Yeah, fantastic stuff. Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. Got maybe time for one more.
I don't mind doing some of mine. I feel I was trying to give an opportunity for other people to talk, but I don't mind.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'll just put myself on camera again so everybody knows who is talking. I'll go through what I've written. There's my list. Okay. I remember the roof of my bedroom ripped open, and appeared from the darkness was the T-Rex. I remember walking to the stage with 500 eyes piercing at me, saying to myself, please do not fall, please do not fall, please do not fall. I remember looking up, smiling and staring at the gold lettering that spelled out my name. I remember every Sunday was the day Mom sat us down to talk. I remember the eyes, cannot forget the finger. So that's just mine.
Wow. And I like the fact that they're not holding the reader's hand in terms of explaining everything, that there is that space to kind of inhabit and to get a sense of them. Yeah. And again, so kind of really specific and really kind of you can feel the memory kind of coming live, but they also trigger other memories and kind of and I'm sure other people, as they've been listening to all of these being read, that there'll be ones that kind of go, oh yeah, I remember something a bit like that, or I've got a thing like kind of and it can be a way to start building connections between people as well, in terms of it's a shame we're not in a room sort of together, because that kind of does help, I think, with the with that side of things, with this kind of activity. But thank you for sharing again, Nina. That's great. That's awesome.
I have to admit, it brought the child out of me. Because I was remembering things as a childhood, so it brought the child out of me, and I was laughing and giggling to myself. So I don't know if anybody else experienced that when they're trying to reminisce of positive things. So that was quite a nice feeling. But yeah, thanks.
Oh, that's great. No, that's great. That's exactly the sort of response that I'd hope for from this kind of activity. It should be something pleasurable, and that it is that, again, it's that thing of just focusing on things that are really positive in our lives, and kind of and that are there, and that are all, they're kind of these memories are there for us, they're to sort of tap into and to feel to feel more, to help us feel more positive, and to help sort of kind of do that thing of, well, as I was saying, of kind of moving our brain back onto a more positive track, onto on something like that. It's fantastic. I'm seeing all of on the Padlet. There's just so many great lines on here. Thank you so much to everyone who's posted these up. Yeah, I wish I had time now. I'm aware it's at sort of 4 o'clock and the session's due to end. So, and also I'd love to sort of spend a bit of time reading some of these out. But yeah, as I say, we've reached the end of the time. But hopefully you've all had a positive experience from engaging with these activities. And I would say that if you got a moment over the weekend, maybe perhaps, or in the week to come, kind of dipping back into these activities and have a go at maybe assembling your own I Remember poem, or a poem about a line, kind of list poem of your brilliant things. Creating and crafting and creating a finished piece of work. There's a real pleasure in that side of things as well, and hopefully you've got enough of a start now so that you can, maybe if you want to, you can have a go at that. Yeah, so that's kind of the two sort of things that I wanted to kind of go through with you, and I'm just really heartened to hear the sort of the positive feedback in terms of the effect that it's had on people, because that's exactly what the effect that these activities should have. It's about generating a positivity for yourself around the things that are kind of in your lives, in your experience, in your memory. Awesome. Thanks very much for taking the time to come and do some shared writing with us this afternoon as well. Really appreciate that.
Thanks, Dan. You're getting some brilliant feedback in the chat, by the way. I might have to take a screenshot of it and send it to you later, because it's just...
Yeah, thanks. It's really sad it's really sad I can't see that.
It is. It's a shame. I mean, I can read them out for you now if you've got some time.